When the police knocked on my door that morning, I thought they had the wrong address. But then I saw the look in their eyes, the way one of them avoided meeting mine, and I knew. This was about her. My best friend. The woman whose baby I had once cradled like my own. The woman I had trusted with every piece of my heart. "Ma'am, we need to ask you a few questions about a missing child," the taller officer said, his voice polite but clipped. My hands trembled as I clutched the edge of the door. Missing? Whose child? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. He exchanged a glance with his partner. "A baby named Lily." My heart stopped. The air left my lungs in a single jagged breath. Lily, the child I helped bring into this world. The one I'd signed papers for when my best friend Rachel couldn't. The one I had loved like she was mine. But now they were looking at me as if I had stolen her. Before all of this, Rachel and I were inseparable. We met in college, two broke girls with big dreams and cheap coffee addictions. She was the loud one, full of laughter that filled every room. I was quieter, more cautious, the kind of person who triple checks oven knobs before leaving home. When we graduated, we both settled in the same small town. I became a school counselor. She married her college sweetheart, Ethan, and started a small event planning business. We were each other's family in every way that mattered: birthdays, holidays, heartbreaks. I used to joke that Rachel was the sister I never had. She used to say I was the calm she never knew she needed. But the laughter began to fade around the time she started trying for a baby. At first, she'd share every detail: the fertility appointments, the hormone shots, the endless tests. I'd sit beside her in waiting rooms, holding her hand, making her laugh when the nurse took too long. But month after month, the news was the same. No pregnancy. Then came the day she called me in tears. "I can't do it anymore, May," she sobbed into the phone. "They said my body just won't. It won't carry." I remember sitting in silence, heart aching for her. Rachel had always wanted to be a mother more than anything. She used to talk about baby names in college, sketching them in notebooks like little dreams she could one day hold. I went to her house that night. She was curled up on the couch, eyes red and swollen. I made her tea and sat beside her. "I'm so sorry, Rach," I whispered. She leaned into me like a child. "It's not fair. Ethan wants to adopt, but the agency said with my medical history we'd need a different kind of approval. I don't know what to do." That was the first time I heard her mention the idea, the one that would change everything. "What if," she said slowly, "you helped me? Just for the paperwork. You're stable, you have no medical issues, and we could figure out a way for me to raise the baby." I frowned, confused. "You mean, sign as the adoptive parent?" She nodded, her voice soft, trembling. "Only legally, May. I'd still be the mom. You know that. I just need someone the agency will approve. Please, you're the only person I trust." I should have said no. Every part of me should have screamed that it was wrong, that laws existed for a reason, that emotions and paperwork should never mix. But then I looked at her face, pale and desperate, and I remembered all the time she'd stood by me. Through my father's funeral, my divorce, the dark days when I thought I'd never find myself again. So I said yes. The adoption process was quiet, almost mechanical. Forms, interviews, signatures. The social worker barely looked up when I signed the final page. I remember the smell of the office, stale air and cheap disinfectant, and how Rachel squeezed my hand under the table. When Lily was born, Rachel was radiant. She looked at that baby like she was a miracle, and maybe she was. I was there in the delivery room, watching Rachel's tears fall as the nurse placed that tiny bundle in her arms. "You did it," I whispered. "No," she said, smiling at me through the tears. "We did." For the first few months, everything was perfect. Rachel and Ethan raised Lily like their world revolved around her. I visited every weekend, bringing baby clothes, helping with late-night feedings, rocking Lily to sleep when Rachel needed rest. But little things started to change after a while. Rachel stopped answering my calls as often. When I came over, she seemed tense, possessive, like she didn't want me too close to the baby. Once, when Lily reached out for me, Rachel quickly pulled her back. "She's tired," she said sharply. "You're overstimulating her." Stung, but I brushed it off. I told myself she was just stressed, that motherhood was harder than she'd expected. Until one day I came by unannounced and saw something that made my stomach twist. Through the window I saw Rach. I tried to tell myself I was overthinking it, that maybe Rachel was just trying to draw boundaries as a new mother. But once you've seen someone's eyes darken toward you, you can't unsee it. Over the next few weeks, her tone changed, not all at once but in small cutting ways. When I'd stop by with groceries or baby formula, she'd force a smile and say, "Oh, May, you didn't have to do that. We're fine." But her eyes flickered with something else, irritation, maybe even fear. One afternoon, I showed up with a small dress I'd found on sale. It was yellow with little embroidered daisies. Lily would have looked like sunshine in it. Rachel took the bag, peeked inside and sighed. "May," she said quietly, "I think it's better if you call before coming by. We're trying to establish Lily's routine, and unexpected visits throw her off." Her words were polite enough, but they sliced through me like glass. I nodded slowly. "Of course. I didn't mean to intrude." She smiled thin, brittle. "You know I appreciate everything you've done. But Ethan and I need to parent on our own now." Parent. The word echoed in my head as I walked back to my car. I'd never claimed to be Lily's mother, but the way she said it, like she needed to remind me of something I'd forgotten, made my stomach twist. I spent that night rereading the adoption documents, something I hadn't done since signing them. My name was right there, May Harper, listed as the legal adoptive parent. Rachel and Ethan's names weren't mentioned anywhere. At the time, the plan was simple. After a year, when everything stabilized, Rachel would apply for custody through a private arrangement, and we'd transfer it quietly. But nothing had ever been filed to change that. Legally, I was still Lily's mother. I remember sitting there, the papers spread across my kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. My hands were shaking, not because I wanted to claim Lily, but because I realized how fragile everything really was. One misunderstanding, one argument, and all of this could fall apart. A few days later, Rachel called. Her voice was strained, rushed. "May, could you come over? Please." When I arrived, she looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hair unbrushed. Lily was crying in the background. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, sinking onto the couch. "Ethan's been distant, the baby barely sleeps, and I feel like I'm losing my mind." I went to her side, instinctively wrapping an arm around her. "Hey, you're doing your best. It's just a rough phase. You'll get through it." She leaned against me, sobbing. "Sometimes I feel like Lily doesn't even see me as her mother. She smiles at you more than me." Her words caught me off guard. "Rachel, she's a baby. She smiles at anyone who makes her feel safe." But she pulled away, eyes sharp. "You think I don't notice how she reaches for you? You think I don't see how you look at her?" I froze. "Rat shy. I appreciate what you did," she said, cutting me off. "But maybe you should give us some space." I think it's confusing her. I wanted to argue, but the look on her face, a mixture of jealousy and pain, stopped me. So I left quietly. For weeks I didn't see Lily. I busied myself with work, trying not to think about them. But every night, I'd hear echoes of Lily's soft giggles in my mind, the way her little fingers used to curl around mine. Then one evening Ethan called. "May," he said hesitantly, "can we talk?" I agreed, though my heart raced. We met at a small cafe on the edge of town. He looked weary, thinner than I remembered. "Rachel's been struggling," he began. "Postpartum hit her hard. She barely eats, she cries all the time. And now she's obsessed with the idea that you're trying to take Lily away." My stomach dropped. "What? That's not true. I haven't even seen them in weeks." "I know," he said, rubbing his temples. "But she's convinced. She even told her mother that you forged the adoption papers." I felt my pulse in my throat. "Forged? Ethan, she was there when I signed them. She asked me to do it." He nodded slowly. "I know, but you know how she gets when she's hurt. She's not thinking clearly." "Then help her," I said softly, "before this gets worse." He gave me a sad smile. "I'm trying. Just give her time, okay? Don't reach out." I wanted to believe it would pass. That time would heal her resentment. But it didn't. A month later, I received a letter from a law firm. It was brief, cold, and devastating. Subject: Custody Petition, Lily Harper. Our client, Mrs. Rachel Porter, has filed a petition to contest the legal custody of minor child, Lily Harper, citing fraudulent adoption and unlawful retention of parental rights. I read the words again and again, unable to process them. Fraudulent? Unlawful? I sank into a chair. The courtroom smelled faintly of old paper and disinfectant, a sterile place for something as messy as betrayal. I sat there at the petitioner's table, hands clasped so tightly my knuckles were white. Across from me sat Rachel, dressed in a pale blue blouse I'd once bought her for her birthday. Her hair was neat, makeup flawless, but her eyes, they were cold, distant, unfamiliar. We hadn't spoken since that last phone call. Her lawyer, a sharp-faced woman with a tight bun, flipped through a folder before standing. "Your Honor," she began, "we intend to prove that my client, Mrs. Rachel Porter, was deceived into a fraudulent adoption arrangement by Ms. May Harper, who knowingly exploited her friend's infertility and emotional vulnerability." The words hit me like blows. Deceived. Exploited. Each one twisted into my chest like a blade. My own attorney, a kind older man named Daniel, leaned in and whispered, "Don't react. Let them speak first." But it was hard not to. How could I sit there silent while my best friend, the woman I trusted with every piece of my soul, painted me as a thief? Rachel's voice was calm when she took the stand. "I just wanted to be a mother," she said, tears welling in her eyes. May offered to help me. She said it would just be paperwork, that the baby would still be mine. But then she started acting like Lily was hers, bringing gifts, showing up uninvited, even telling people she was the mother. "That's a lie," I whispered, my throat dry. "Quiet," Daniel murmured, resting a hand on my arm. Rachel sniffled dramatically. When I confronted her, she became possessive. I was scared. I thought she might take Lily away from me. Her lawyer nodded sympathetically. "And did she ever threaten you?" Rachel hesitated just long enough for the pause to sting. "She didn't have to. Her name on the paper said it all." By the time it was my turn to testify, my heart felt like it had been wrung dry. Daniel guided me gently to the stand. "Miss Harper," he said, his tone even, "can you explain how your name came to appear on the adoption documents?" I swallowed hard. Rachel asked me to. She said the agency wouldn't approve her because of her medical history. I only did it to help. She was my best friend. We had an agreement that once the baby was settled, she'd apply for custody properly. "And did you ever attempt to claim the child as your own?" "Never," I said firmly. "I love that baby, but I never pretended to be her mother." Rachel looked away, her jaw clenched. "Did you ever receive any compensation, gifts, or financial benefit from this arrangement?" "No. I did it because I cared about her." Daniel nodded, satisfied. No further questions. But Rachel's lawyer wasn't finished. She approached the stand with a small, knowing smile. "Miss Harper, you say you did this purely out of friendship, yes?" "Yes." She held up a printed email. "Then how do you explain this message sent 2 weeks after Lily's birth?" My stomach dropped as she read aloud. "Sometimes I feel like she's mine too. Like fate gave me a piece of what I never had." The courtroom murmured. My voice cracked. That was an emotional message. I was expressing how attached I felt after helping care for her. It wasn't literal. But the lawyer's smirk said everything. In that moment, it didn't matter what I meant, only how it looked. Rachel's eyes met mine across the room, and for a second I saw something flicker there. Guilt? Doubt? Maybe both. But she looked away quickly, jaw tightening again. After the hearing, I found her in the hallway outside, standing by the water fountain. I hesitated, then approached slowly. "Rachel," I said quietly, "please, we don't have to do this. You know I never meant to hurt you." She didn't look at me. "You hurt me the moment you signed those papers, May. You asked me to sign them." She turned then, eyes blazing. "Because I trusted you. I thought you understood what it meant. But you took everything from me. My chance to be her mother, my peace, my dignity." I shook my head, tears filling my eyes. "I took nothing from you. You were her mother in every way that mattered. You just wanted the world to see it that way too. And now you're willing to destroy me to make it official." Her lips trembled, but her voice stayed cold. "You wouldn't understand. You've always had everything: stability, respect, a job people admire. I had one thing left to fight for. Rachel." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You think you're the hero here, don't you? The selfless friend. But you never once thought how it felt to watch you bond with my baby, while I sat there feeling like a guest in my own home. I did think about it, I said, my voice breaking. Every day. That's why I stepped back. That's why I stayed away. She blinked, faltering for just a moment, then stray. I didn't sleep that night. The social worker's words kept looping in my head like a song with no ending. Something doesn't match the agency records. By dawn, I was sitting at my kitchen table, a mug of cold coffee in front of me, staring at the adoption file that had started this nightmare. Every page carried my signature, neat, careful, but I noticed something I'd missed before. On the final approval form under Agency Officer, there was a signature I didn't recognize, S. Klein. The name didn't ring a bell. During the process, I'd only dealt with a woman named Janet Miller, a kind-faced coordinator who'd guided us through the paperwork. So who was this S. Klein? And why had I never met them? That afternoon, I drove to the adoption agency, a squat brick building with faded posters about family first, taped to the windows. The receptionist, a young man who looked barely out of college, smiled politely. "Hi, I'm looking for Janet Miller," I said. He frowned, typing quickly. "Miller? We haven't had anyone by that name here for over a year." My stomach dropped. "Are you sure? She handled an adoption for me, for Rachel Porter." He shook his head. "Sorry, ma'am. We've had some staffing changes. But if you want to check your file, I can have our supervisor pull it." I waited in the lobby for nearly 40 minutes, every tick of the clock growing louder in the silence. Finally, a woman appeared, tall, gray-haired, wearing a calm but cautious expression. "I'm Susan Klein," she said. My breath caught. "You're the one who signed my paperwork." She nodded, her tone professional. "Yes, though that was an unusual case. May I ask why you're inquiring?" "Because my friend, the one who asked me to help with the adoption, is now accusing me of fraud," I said quietly. "And I need to understand what went wrong." Her expression softened. "I remember your file. In fact, I raised concerns about it at the time. It came to us through an intermediary, a woman named Janet Miller, who wasn't actually employed here. She used our forms but worked as an independent consultant." I blinked. "You're saying she wasn't real?" "She was real," Susan said carefully, "but she wasn't authorized to process adoptions under our agency. When I noticed the irregularities, I reported it. Unfortunately, the state never followed up." My chest tightened. "So what does that mean? Are the documents valid?" "They're legally binding because your name is on them," she explained. "But the process itself might have been manipulated. If Mrs. Porter didn't know the details, it's possible she believed something different from what was filed." "Manipulated how?" Susan sighed. "Sometimes private intermediaries cut corners or misrepresent details to make adoptions go through faster. It's unethical, but it happens." So that was it. The missing link. Rachel and I had both been pawns, our trust weaponized by someone who knew how to bend the rules. I left the agency shaking. The sun outside was too bright, the air too sharp. Rachel's anger suddenly made sense, twisted but understandable. She'd been promised something, and the paperwork I'd signed had taken it from her without her realizing. But still, how far she'd gone to destroy me could never be undone. That night, I sat at my desk and began gathering every piece of evidence I had. Emails from Janet, text messages between me and Rachel, even the old agency receipts. I organized everything into folders, labeling each one by date. When I was done, I called Daniel, my lawyer. "I found something," I said, "and it changes everything." We met the next morning in his office, a small space lined with books and dusty family photos. I slid the documents across his desk. He read in silence, brow furrowing. "You're telling me the intermediary wasn't a legitimate employee?" "Yes." The agency confirmed it. He exhaled slowly. "This is good, May. Proves you didn't orchestrate this. In fact, you might have been defrauded too." I nodded, but my stomach still twisted with guilt. Rachel won't see it that way. She doesn't care about paperwork. She just wants Lily back. Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Then we show her the truth through the court. If this Janet misled both of you, there's a trail. I'll subpoena agency communications." For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. But that hope was short-lived. 2 nights later, I received a message from an unknown number. You should stop digging. For everyone's sake. No name. No context. Just that. I stared at the screen, the words burning into my mind. Someone didn't want the truth to come out, and whoever they were close enough to know what I was doing. I went to the window and looked out into the quiet street. The wind rustled the trees, and in the distance a dog barked. Everything knew. When the court reconvened 2 weeks later, the air inside the courtroom felt heavier. Like even the walls knew this was the day everything would change. Rachel sat on the other side of the aisle, her shoulders rigid, her hand gripping the edge of the table as if holding on to something invisible. I wanted to reach out, to tell her that I didn't hate her, that I just wanted peace. But we were too far gone for that now. My lawyer Daniel had a new stack of folders, fresh evidence labeled neatly. When the judge entered, the shuffle of papers and low murmurs faded into silence. Your Honor, Daniel began, standing tall, we have uncovered new documentation regarding the adoption process in question. These records reveal fraudulent activity by a third party, one who misrepresented both my client and the petitioner in order to expedite the adoption approval. The judge raised an eyebrow. Proceed. Daniel handed over a set of documents. These forms, filed by an intermediary posing as a licensed adoption worker, show inconsistencies in both signature placement and agency authorization. The woman known as Janet Miller, who facilitated this arrangement, was not affiliated with the registered agency. She forged records to make both parties believe they were the rightful parent. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Rachel's lawyer stood quickly. Objection, speculative at best. There's no proof this so-called intermediary even existed. Daniel's lips curved faintly. Actually, there is. He motioned toward the witness bench. Your Honor, I'd like to call Ms. Susan Klein, director of the adoption agency. Susan walked to the stand with the calm assurance of someone who'd been waiting for this moment. Her voice was measured as she explained how she discovered Janet's unauthorized activity, how the agency had filed reports that were quietly buried, and how both Rachel and I had been misled. She used our forms, our letterhead, Susan said. Neither woman here understood what they were signing. Ms. Harper believed she was acting legally to assist her friend. Mrs. Porter believed she was participating in a conditional adoption. They were both victims of procedural fraud. The judge leaned back, steepling his fingers. So neither party intended to deceive the other? That's correct. I watched Rachel's face as Susan spoke. Her expression softened, confusion flickering where anger had once been. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering frantically, but Rachel didn't seem to hear her. Her eyes found mine across the room for the first time in months. And I saw it, the dawning horror of realization. When it was my turn to testify again, I spoke carefully, deliberately. I never wanted to take anything from Rachel. I just wanted to help her become a mother. If I had known the documents were false, I never would have signed them. The judge nodded slowly, then turned to Rachel. Mrs. Porter, do you wish to respond? She hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought she betrayed me. I thought she took Lily away. Her words trembled. But if this is true, if someone tricked both of us. She stopped, pressing her fingers to her eyes. Her lawyer placed a hand on her arm, but Rachel shook it off. No. Let me finish. She looked at me then, and for the first time in nearly a year I saw my friend again. I hurt you, May, she said, voice breaking. I accused you of something unforgivable because I was drowning in grief and fear. I thought I'd lost everything. But you were the only person who ever stood beside me, and I turned that against you. Tears blurred my vision. Rachel. She swallowed hard. I can't undo what I did. But I can tell the truth now. The judge cleared his throat gently. In light of this testimony and the new evidence, I am dismissing the charges against Ms. Harper. Further investigation into the intermediary's fraud will be pursued by state authorities. Custody of the child, Lily Harper, will be reviewed under proper legal procedure. The gavel came down with a dull thud. It was over. Reporters were waiting outside, their cameras flashing like lightning. Someone shouted, May, how does it feel to be cleared? Another asked, Are you still friends with Mrs. Porter? I didn't answer. I just walked past them, clutching my bag, my heart still trembling with disbelief. Behind me, I heard Rachel's voice call out, "May, wait." I stopped but didn't turn around right away. When I did, she was standing there, her face streaked with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For everything." For a long time, I didn't speak. There were 1,000 things I wanted to say, all the pain, the sleepless nights, the humiliation. But looking at her, I realized that nothing I said could undo what had been done. So I just nodded. "I know." She stepped closer, hesitant. "Lily, she's safe." And she is. For a long time after the court case ended, I lived in a strange quiet. It wasn't peace, not yet. More like the hush that comes after a storm, when the sky is still heavy with leftover rain. Every morning, I'd sit by the window with my cup of tea, watching the world outside move on. Kids hurrying to school, dogs tugging at their leashes, couples walking hand in hand. Ordinary things. And I would remind myself that the ordinary was what I'd missed most. Not the drama, not the adrenaline, but the calm of a day that didn't demand survival. The world had called me a kidnapper once. But now I was just May again. I started small, volunteering at the local daycare on weekends, helping with crafts and story time. The first time I read a picture book aloud to a circle of giggling toddlers, something inside me cracked open. Their laughter, pure, unfiltered, was the sound of life continuing. And it reminded me of Lily. At first, I avoided saying her name out loud. It hurt too much. But one evening, as I packed up paints and paper, a little girl with pigtails tugged at my sleeve and asked, "Miss May, do you have a daughter?" I froze for a second, then smiled softly. "I used to," I said. "In a way." The child nodded, satisfied, and skipped off. And somehow that tiny exchange made it easier to breathe again. Rachel and I didn't speak for months after the hearing. I didn't expect to. Some wounds need silence before they can even think about healing. But one morning, I found her waiting by my car outside the daycare. She looked older somehow, not in years but in the weight of what she'd carried. "I've been going to therapy," she said quietly, almost shyly. "My counselor says part of making amends is facing the people I hurt." I nodded slowly. "That's good." "I didn't come to reopen anything," she continued. "I just wanted to thank you for not destroying me when you had every right to." Her words caught me off guard. I searched her face for the bitterness that used to live there, but it was gone. What I saw instead was remorse, raw, human, and fragile. "I don't think either of us won," I said finally. "We just survived." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "Lily's turning 4 next week," she said. "She asks about you sometimes. Would you want to come?" The question hung in the air like a heartbeat. For a moment, I wasn't sure if I could handle it. Seeing that child again, holding all that love and loss in the same breath. But then I remembered the photograph. The little girl in sunlight, holding the yellow stuffed duck. And I realized that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. It was about choosing peace over pain again and again. "I'd like that," I said softly. The party was small, just family and a few neighbors. Balloons tied to the porch rail, a cake covered in pink frosting, the faint smell of vanilla and candles in the air. When Lily spotted me, she tilted her head in that curious way children do when they're trying to place a memory. Then she smiled, wide and sudden, and ran straight into my arms. "May," she squealed. "Mommy said you used to sing to me." I laughed through tears. "I did," I whispered. "Every night." She looked up at me, her little hands cupping my cheeks. "Will you sing again?" So I did. Just a lullaby, the same one I used to hum when Rachel first brought her home. The melody floated between us, gentle and familiar. And for the first time in years, my heart didn't ache. Rachel stood a few feet away, watching quietly. There was no tension this time, no fear. Just two women bound by the same child, sharing a moment of grace. When the song ended, Lily clapped her tiny hands. "Can you come again, May?" I smiled. "If your mommy says yes." Rachel's voice was steady. "She just did." That night as I drove home, the sun dipped low over the horizon, a smear of gold and rose across the sky. I rolled down the window, let the wind tangle my hair, and for the first time I felt free. Free from blame. Free from guilt. Free from the ache of what might have been. I realized then that forgiveness isn't a single act. It's a choice you make every day, to let the light back in, even when your heart still remembers the dark. I didn't get the ending I once dreamed of, the picture-perfect family, the child I could call mine forever. But I got something different, something real, a chance to start again. And maybe that's what healing truly is. Not erasing the past, but learning to live with it in peace. Weeks later, I visited my mother's old garden, the one she used to tend before she passed. The roses had come back in bloom, wild and untamed. I knelt beside them, letting the petals brush against my fingers. I whispered, "It's over now, Mama." I did my best. The wind rustled softly through the leaves, almost like a sigh. And I smiled, a small, quiet smile. Sometimes, when the night gets quiet, I still hear the echo of Lily's laughter. It floats through my mind like a memory carried by wind. Fragile, distant, but never gone. There are moments I wonder what life would have been like if things had gone differently. If Rachel and I had never trusted that woman. If the papers had been real. If I had been the one to tuck Lily into bed every night. But then I remind myself maybe we were never meant to own love. Maybe we're only ever meant to hold it for a while, to care for it, and when the time comes to release it back into the world with grace. That's what I did. That's what I had to learn. Betrayal changes you. Cracks something open inside you that never quite closes the same way again. But sometimes, that's where the light gets in. Rachel and I will never be who we were before. Two friends dreaming of motherhood over coffee and laughter. But we've built something quieter now. Something honest. And maybe that's enough. Because forgiveness isn't about saying it's okay. It's about saying, I won't let this break me. I see Lily from time to time. She's growing taller, braver. Her curls bouncing as she runs across the park. She doesn't call me Mommy. And that's okay. She calls me Auntie May. And when she smiles, it feels like a full circle has closed. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: love will test you. It will stretch you in ways you never expect. But if you can keep your heart soft, if you can still choose kindness even after it's been broken, that's where true strength lives. So tell me, if you were in my place, would you have forgiven her? Would you have shown up to that little girl's birthday? I'd love to know what your heart would have done. Share your thoughts in the comments, and if my story touched you, don't forget to subscribe and stay a while. Because sometimes the hardest stories to tell are the ones that finally set us free.